What's going on here?
Combining the miracle of modern technology with the secrets of ordinary street junkies. Producing this.
89.7 WTBR FM, Pittsfield.
Welcome to Ham on WTBR, the all-inclusive ham radio show for hams and non-hams alike. Be part of the show. Contact us on www.facebook.com/HamJamTV. And now the hosts of the show, Peter and Jessica. Ham on.
Good morning from Berkshire County in Pittsfield, Massachusetts on WTBR FM.
Good morning, everybody. How are you today?
The end of the month coming quick.
I know.
Next week is the Haunted Ham On.
Oh, yes.
It's gonna be fun. This week's a big show. Next week's a big show.
Oh,
Good morning, everybody. Welcome
everybody.
Welcome to Ham On. Let's jump right into the news.
I don't know what it is. It seems like every month that has a holiday, it just flies by. Every month that doesn't have a holiday, it just keeps crawling.
I don't know. It seems a long time since last week to this week.
I know.
We had N1PZP here last week via the phone, and he like killed it for the first time on the phone. So.
Oh, I know.
James there, N1PZP. The topic today is Skywarn. And we have in our studio, which we'll have on later, is...
Oh, well, say good morning, everybody. This is Rob Macedo, KD1CY. I'm the Amateur Radio Emergency Services, or ARES Skywarn Coordinator for the National Weather Service in Norton, Mass, and the Eastern Mass ARES SEC.
And he will be on to tell us all about Skywarn, and since he's not actually a meteorologist, we can't complain about the weather. But he's going to talk about Skywarn. He will be on a little bit right now. He's just kind of
we'll also get non-hams that are into weather or into science. It will go ahead and stimulate them and go, what is the Skywarn? Maybe I want to know about it.
And we're going to know about it. That's why he drove all the way from wherever he drove from. I've only been here a year. I have no clue where Norton is. So
Norton is in the southeast part of the state, and I'm from New Bedford, which is a little south of there. So that's where we came from this morning.
Oh, wow.
We had Marcia Ford here, KW1U.
Yep.
She was one of our first guests. She drove all the way from Concord just to spend an hour on the show. We had N2VU here 2 weeks ago. Excuse me. He came from Queensbury.
Yep.
And James says to say hi, by the way, N1PZP.
Yeah, know James also, and I know Marcia as well, so a very tight-knit community, us amateur radio operators.
He was on the phone with us last week. And he saw the promo that I put in WTBR and go, well, you've got him here? Say hi for me. So we're saying hi on behalf of James and N1PZP. And I don't know if you know, but Marsh is the section traffic manager. I'm the assistant section traffic manager for Western Massachusetts. So this is why I do this. Anyway, let's pop over to the news.
Oh, yeah. ARES volunteers in Hawaii took the opportunity for the 2019 stimulated emergency test on October to test the WinLink radio messaging to the U.S. mainland using the KH6YY, KH6J contest station on Oahu. Of the premier contest stations in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. K6YY offered a commanding propagation path over the expansion of the saltwater, so they had a simulated test to connect Hawaii to the mainland.
Well, if you're talking about the simulated emergency test,
yeah,
it's nationwide. Different clubs do it, and we check in from police departments, fire departments, wherever, and you get points for it. So.
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah. You did it a couple times in Albany. I remember that.
Yeah, the SET.
Where you had to check into, I think it was AMC, which is Albany Med. And
Albany Medical Center, St. Peter's.
And
the Albany Police Department. They do it here. You check into Berkshire Medical Center. You check into, Pittsfield PD, Pittsfield FD.
Oh, yeah?
You get more points if you're actually in the building when you check in.
Oh, cool. Then, let me see. Here we go. Hawaii boasts the most isolated population in the world, of course, because, hello, it's an island. They were able to get as far as, with WinLink, you're able to get as far as, the Caribbean. It helps with it helps, in use for the aftermaths of hurricanes and, the Caribbean. It's helped with earthquakes in Mexico, so this WinLink stuff helped out a lot. What exactly is WinLink?
WinLink is a computer email program that you can actually send email over the HF bands, the VHF bands. You can hook your radio up to it, and you can actually send email right over the air. We use it a lot in the SETs. We use it a lot for disaster relief.
Okay. So they would have to learn how.
Well, instead of sending out the ISO 32s, whatever they are, for radiograms, we can send a whole email. Just type out a whole email and send it right through the WinLink system to whatever stations will need to receive it, and give them a whole detail.
Oh, that would be what? Digital? The digital part of ham radio?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, you're using the computer, of course, so of course it'll be the digital part. But there's a lot of controversy about that. I think there's actually somebody trying to file a petition with the FCC saying WinLink is encrypted, and according to Part 97, you're not supposed to use encrypted. It's supposed to be, where everybody can pick it up. But but the problem is, if you have a WinLink program, you can pick it up. We're not hiding anything.
Yeah, you're not hiding anything. Let me see. KH6YY Sports. 8 antennas. That's one heck of an antenna farm. Holy crap.
Art Bell had more.
Well, of course Art had more. Most of them are 90-foot towers and 9 operation positions. That is crazy. But yes, the incoming traffic was on 40 meters, and it was automatically forwarded to the mainland, which would be near the coastal United States, on 20 meters. So what, they started transmitting on 40 and then moved to 20?
Yeah. Pretty much.
Oh, wow.
WinLink you can use WinLink on VHF and UHF. We don't so much, but you can. It's mainly an HF thingy, but...
Well, I don't know, and thank you for explaining this to me.
That's what I'm here for. All the useless knowledge of ham radio, this is what we do this for every week.
It's not useless. I mean, ham radio is used for a lot of things.
Are you done with your news story?
Yes, I'm done with my news story. I'm sorry, I was having a discussion.
We'll have a discussion in a minute. I want to put this out there, because this is kind of cool.
What do you have?
I have Anna Broomer, N2FER, is feted on her 105th birthday.
Oh, God bless her. Oh, my God.
When she turned 80, Anna Broomer, N2FER, of Fort Edward, New York, predicted she would live to be 100. On September 27th, she topped her own forecast by 5 years as she celebrated her birthday at the Fort Hudson Nursing Center. Surrounded by family and friends, the only thing she wanted was a drink of Scotch whiskey, and the nursing home obliged. Along with a slice of cake, unit manager Don Hopkins told Post-Star News reporter Greta Hochsprung that she didn't attempt to put the 105 candles on Broomer's cake because it would have been a fire hazard.
Oh, my God.
Broomer told Hodgkins that the secret to longevity is being nice to people. Keeps you young. When everything's
yeah.
going smooth, she told the reporter Ann Broomer was a latecomer to amateur radio in 1984. Her son, Richard K2JQ, got his mom and his dad, Edwin, interested in amateur radio, and Anna obtained her technician license when she was 69 years old. Edwin Broomer, who died in 1996, was N2FEQ and held a Tech Plus ticket. They were married for 56 years. Anna Broomer was born in the Bronx and went on to work as a sales clerk at Craig's Market, making $12 an hour. When Craig's folded, she became a school cafeteria worker in Massapequa on Long Island. Richard Brummer, who described his mother as very loving, said she definitely has a will to live. No official records are kept. But Anna Brummer is among a small circle of Centurion radio amateurs in the U.S. and may be the oldest woman now holding a license. Cliff Khart, W4KKP of South Carolina, appears to be the oldest active U.S. radio amateur at 107. Arlene Buddy Clay, K7OT, lived to be 103.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, you're holding a story over there that we need to have a little bit of a discussion on. Because it's been blowing up Facebook for about 3 weeks now. What's going on in California there? So,
the California controversy you talk about was a viral videos stemming from a California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection communication telling a repeater owner that they have to remove a state-owned site or vault.
Right, and here's how the story lays out. He got ticked off because the state said, "Hey, you know what? You can't have the vault for free anymore. So you have to sign an agreement like." We hear
what
like,
exactly is a vault?
How do I explain this? If you go up to Greylock, up to some of the Greylock, and underneath the inn there is the bunker.
Yeah.
The bunker that has the KF K1 FFK repeaters in it. So, and that's state-owned land up there.
Yeah.
So this guy was able to get free rent in the bunker where they put the state radios, the state police radios, and fire and whatever.
Yeah.
And now they're saying, here's what they're saying, and this just goes for him. They're saying, look, dude, you can keep where you are. We can keep it there, but you have to sign an agreement, which No Bark does for K1FFK.
Yeah.
And then you have to pay us so much a year to keep it there, which No Bark does for K1FFK.
Yeah.
This guy flipped, put out a viral video and said that CAL FIRE and the state of California did not want amateur radio repeaters up anymore and for everybody to take their repeaters down.
That's not what they
Facebook
said.
blew up. He blew Facebook up. Everybody jumped on Facebook. So the long and short of this is he just needs to sign an agreement with the state of California, pay some money every year, just like we do at No Bark for the K1FFK machines.
So because he had to pay rent to CAL FIRE and to the state of California, he's flipping his mind because of it.
Right. And it's very simple here. And if he can't pay the rent, he's got to move the machine. Everybody does that. We do it here. I told you we do it. K1FFK.
Yeah,
they put
I know. I mean, we pay.
No Bark has to pay so much
the
a year.
Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yeah, No
they?
Bark has to pay so much to Massachusetts to keep the repeaters in the bunker, and they've got 5 repeaters: the 2 meter, 440, 6 meter, 900, the APRS, and the packet. I don't know. I don't know if NOAA Weather Radio, because it's a federal.
Yeah, it's separate. It'd be separate from the amateur radio equipment.
They don't have to pay to be up on
right.
the. But when we're going to get to this, but real quickly, because I want to jump in. I'll go through your bio and everything after the break. But my weather radio, I get Albany and Norton. So where is the Norton transmitter for NOAA Weather Radio?
Well, so there's multiple transmitters. The one in Berkshire County will carry some of the activity from Norton, and then there's the other transmitters that'll carry mostly the Norton piece. Because of the different coverage areas, you'll get traffic on the NOAA weather radios from both the Albany and the Norton offices because of the transmitters' coverage into both of those areas. So you'll get information from both.
All right, cool.
Oh, so it's like a double coverage area for Pittsfield.
We'll come back to Joe here in a few minutes after the break. But before we go to the break, the trivia questions for today. We'll panel the group and we'll panel Facebook. And if anybody's got the answer to this, www.facebook.com/HamJamTV. What organization is the ultimate authority for radio amateurs in the United States? That's our trivia question. And when we come back from the break, we will talk about Skywarn and all that good stuff that has to deal with.
You're listening to Ham On and WTBR.
Berkshire weather.
WTBR radar weather for the Pittsfield area. Today, mostly sunny. A chance of showers this morning. Highs in the upper 50s. West wind 10 to 15 miles per hour with gusts up to 25 miles per hour. Chance of rain 40%. Tonight, mostly clear. Cooler with lows in the upper 30s. West wind 10 to 15 miles per hour. Thursday, sunny. Highs in the lower 60s. Southwest wind 5 to 10 miles per hour. Weather forecasts for WTBR FM are provided by the National Weather Service.
Radio for people who used to love radio. Welcome back. WTBR.
In the early hours after the tsunami, it was ham radio that was on the air, saving lives. When Florida was ripped by hurricanes, the hams were there. In the critical moments after the attack of 9/11, it was the hams who coordinated emergency messages. When disasters strike, the hams are ready. Ham radio works when other communications don't. To learn how you can become a ham radio operator, call the ARRL, the National Association for Amateur Radio, at 1-800-326-3942.
Hi, everybody. This is Getty Lee for RAD. To many of us, drunk driving is something that other people do. Certainly not one of our friends or relatives would do such a thing. When you see someone who's had too much to drink, about to get into a car, urge them to give up the keys and find alternate transportation. Always choose a designated driver. Remember, music lives. You should too.
And I know.
A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
I can't take it anymore.
I need to get away.
There's too much to handle.
Being a teenager is tough. Family, teachers, friends, life. The stress can be overwhelming. It's only natural to want to escape.
Things are so hard right now.
I have to get out of here.
Sometimes running away seems like the only choice, but it can be dangerous and definitely not what you expected. National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. Call 1-800-RUNAWAY.
Running away is nothing like I imagined.
I don't know what to do.
Whether you've recently run away, thinking about it, or are a concerned parent or guardian, call 1-800-RUNAWAY. National Runaway Switchboard is free, confidential, available 24 hours a day, offering support and guidance now to get you through this tough time.
1-800-RUNAWAY was there for me.
Thanks, 1-800-RUNAWAY.
I'm glad I called.
We would be honored if you would join us. WTBR.
And welcome back to Ham On WTBR FM. Our topic today is Skywarn.
Were you letting your air out or something?
I was letting my air out. And with that being said, in studio today is Rob Macedo. I hope I said that right. Amateur radio.
It's Macedo, but that's okay. Everybody gets that wrong.
Everybody gets mine wrong, too. Amateur radio call sign KD1CY. He was born and raised in Saratoga Springs, New York. Shout out. And moved to New Bedford, Mass. for college in 1991, where he went to UMass Dartmouth and graduated with an electrical engineering degree. He works at Dell Technologies in Dell EMC division, where he has been for over 24 years. Rob is the Director of System Integration in the Drive Storage Media Engineering, DSME, department, managing a global team of engineers working on disk drives and solid-state drive evaluation in Dell EMC products. Rob has had a very strong interest in technology, meteorology, emergency management, emergency and public service, event communications. Rob has been the amateur radio emergency services Aries Skywarn coordinator for NWS Boston Norton, previously Taunton, for 23 years, and is in the Eastern Massachusetts Aries section emergency coordinator. When he is not at work or doing amateur radio, public service, emergency communications, and weather spotting, volunteer work, Rob enjoys movies, shows, time with family and friends, as well as sporting events, and apparently coming to radio stations to talk. So, welcome to WTBR. Thanks for being here. Let's start right off. Tell us, what is Skywarn?
Yeah, so Skywarn is the National Weather Service's volunteer weather spotting program, where timely severe weather reporting from people, all the people that are listening to this program. You can be an amateur radio operator, but you don't have to be. About 1/3 of Skywarn spotters in the Norton, Mass coverage area are amateur radio operators, so that means 2/3 are not. Though, of course, we're always trying to get the 2/3 that aren't licensed as well. The reports that are gathered based on the Weather Service reporting criteria that is given out at the training sessions that are held in the spring through fall of each year help save lives and property, help with timely severe weather warnings. Many times, with all the technology we have, radar, satellite imagery, and such, you still don't necessarily know what is happening at the surface. The radar only sees a few thousand feet above the surface, and in areas where the radar is furthest away, it misses even more of what's happening along and at the ground. So this is where weather spotters come in, and sometimes, yes, you got people with the weather stations that cost $1,000 or $2,000, and then you have other folks that just have a simple $30 rain gauge and a ruler for measuring snowfall, and just their eyes to help with data that helps in the warning process, helps tell emergency management what is going on, and again helps to gather information quickly to tell people what's really happening on the ground and what protective actions they should make if a severe weather event is coming toward them. So it's very valuable. It's very enjoyable. I believe spotters and amateur operators have helped save lives in a number of situations. And in other cases, maybe it's not life-threatening, but it's helped with the historical record for these storms. There's a lot of data that spotters collect that help tell the story about a specific storm or severe weather event. So I think there's a lot of value in it. There's a lot of educational value. There's a lot of historical value to what we all do. And this is, again, whether you're an amateur radio operator or not. But, of course, for the non-amateur radio Skywarn spotters, we'd love you to join our ranks.
Now, I know I'm going to get a lot of questions popping up on Facebook here in just a minute. So, as Skywarn, does that mean I can go chase tornadoes?
So it's not really storm chasing, and let's face it, this is New England. So here in Western Mass, right, you have all the trees, the hills and mountains, so very hard to really chase. Winding roads. This isn't the plains where it's all flatlands and just flat area, and you can see for miles and such. And in the eastern part of Mass, or for that matter, eastern New York. And again, I hail from Saratoga, so shout out to my friends in Eastern New York and my former mentor, John Farina, W2QCY, just in case he's listening.
I know John.
Yes, John's a good guy.
I think
No, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
no, it's fine.
We know John. He does. He runs the ACs thing. He's part of the ACs group there. He also gets.
Oh yeah, you had to do a VE session there, didn't you?
No, John's part of the Aries ACs group there with John Fritzy K2QI.
Oh yeah,
who will be in this studio next month.
We met him at the picnic.
John Farina KQI, who actually is in charge of the repeater manager for the K2ALB machine that's up on top of St. Peter's.
Yes, yeah. So a shout out to him, because he was a mentor when I was 15 years old, which is when I was first licensed, helping out with Skywarn for the Weather Service Albany office, which does cover Berkshire County. But like I said, we don't really chase here. We certainly can go up on high points and spot from different areas. Another thing that we do is just sometimes you run into things just, driving home from work or driving to work or driving to different events. You may get into storms and you may see activity. Sometimes people will try to get in position to get into the storms, but I wouldn't really call it chasing because it's just, it's just really hard to do that. Sometimes we'll get data from sources about damage in certain areas, and as long as we don't get in the way of public safety, people will be able to go into those areas and see and verify what damage is occurring, and we have done that in our area. So there's a lot of a lot of data that gets gathered there. Some folks also can monitor public safety to help with things, and we have amateur operators in public safety that will report in and also check in with the Weather Service to on amateur radio to report conditions and also ask for updates. One particular case I remember with that is in Shrewsbury. They had a house fire from lightning. And they reported that to us on amateur radio and then asked us, there were more storms coming to the west, what impact was that going to have on their firefighting efforts? And because the gentleman there, WX1L, if I remember the call right, he came on and asked for information, also gave us the information out of Shrewsbury. So it can be a two-way street. And at the Weather Service, there isn't really any public safety radio capability, at least right now. They rely on amateur radio for a lot of that communication. So, so it's also a tremendous responsibility for all of us. So we have to conduct ourselves professionally, both on air and when we go to places, if we do, to see damage areas, and always respect the authorities for whatever they tell us to do, because sometimes it's just unsafe to go into these areas. Live power lines down on the ground, things like that. They don't want people near them. So, so it's very important to respect the authorities in everything that we do for Skywarn or Aries or other things. So just everybody needs to remember that. But I do believe we provide great public service value to the Weather Service and to other agencies. And there's a lot of this data that gets shared with the media. So the Weather Service puts out storm reports that go to the media, and we even have an email list of media that we will send reports to that help augment the reports the Weather Service sends. And sometimes we have so many reports, like, for example, the October storm here that we had just last week. Many reports of trees down. We even had hurricane-force wind gusts in the eastern part of the state, including, I believe it here too in the higher elevations in these mountainous areas. There was a lot of, a lot of tree damage. There was over around 250,000 without power in the state of Massachusetts at the height of that storm. So those are cases where our reports are helpful. And then, we all have a level of technology, right? We have cell phones, and I know people are like, well, this is amateur radio, but right, we can use our cell phones, and we're good with technology to share pictures and video of things. And if you go to our Facebook page, our WX1BOX Facebook page, we have a photo album of all of a bunch of the damage that occurred during the coastal storm last week. And that's a great source of information and documentation for the historical record of what's going on. So a lot of different things. We also are on Twitter. We have a WX1BOX Twitter feed where we also share information. So, we talk about amateur radio in the context of, public service, in the context of emergency communications. The other thing I think we forget is that we are the original form of social media. And that really puts it into perspective for larger media organizations and such. What can amateur radio do? A lot of times I think we trumpet too much communications failing and our support there, which we definitely do. There will always be a need for it, and especially in like Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands for the hurricanes, even like Hurricane Michael in the Florida Panhandle in the United States. I think that's a great example. Category 5 hurricane that caused tremendous damage there. That's going to take out communications. But there are a lot of other cases now where communications that used to go down, or there weren't, the layers of communication that there were before. Now there's enough communications where that stays up. So we have to be ready to embrace different roles from an amateur radio community perspective. And I think one of those roles is being that original form of social media, sharing information we collect, damage reports, photos, etc., sharing all of that information, posting it on modern social media, even monitoring modern forms of social media. Sometimes, right, if amateurs are at work, they can't get to their amateur radio to report in, but they may have a Twitter account, and they'll share it with us there, and they'll put their spotter ID and their amateur radio call in there. Whatever it takes to provide value to the community is what we need to be focused on. And I think this is a role we can embrace so that when communications do fail, people know of our capabilities in this area. They're more likely to use us when those communications fail, because it doesn't happen as often as it did once before, but we all know it will happen. So how do we make ourselves visible and useful when the communications are up? I think this is one of the biggest ways we do it, in addition to public service events and drills and all those other things that we're doing. So I think it provides tons of value. I can tell you that sometimes warnings have been based on reports from the amateur radio community, from Skywarn spotters, and that's the kind of value that we need to be providing, and kind of reinventing ourselves so that we're there and used when comms fail, because we know they will.
I know on the amateur radio side, if you activate Skywarn, you'll come over the repeaters, 9.1 and whatever repeaters you use.
Right, the 9.4 repeater, 7.9 down in Connecticut and such. Yep.
Well, for the non-hams, and if they decide to become Skywarn spotters, how will they know when Skywarn is activated?
So there's a few different ways. So there's the hazardous weather outlook that the Weather Service offices issue. Usually, but I'll be honest, not always update the spotter information statement when there's activation. At the NWF, the NWS Norton coverage area, we have an email list that we push out announcements. So it's not like a discussion list where you could get 30 people talking about the weather. We push out just announcements from that list that say when we're going to be active and what type of activation it is. So, for example, if we're going to have ops at our amateur radio station at the Weather Service in Norton, WX1BOX, we will activate the station there and provide reports and take reports from the office. Other cases, we are doing what we call self-activation, which means we're monitoring different amateur radio frequencies and other modes remotely. And we'll jump on air in different repeaters as conditions warrant. And sometimes we use that during overnight periods where it can be much harder to get reports if people aren't awake. So those are some of our thresholds. And we don't... there are times, right, we'll get short fuse severe weather and we don't know that it's going to happen with much lead time, especially with severe thunderstorms. So that's why we have self-activation, which means if we hear a warning come through from the Weather Service, we just get on the air and call a net. Or if we hear reports of our Skywarn reporting criteria, we will get on the air and take those reports and then forward them into the Weather Service. And of course, we're all volunteers, so sometimes it can catch us when we don't have a volunteer net control and such available. That's why we're always looking for more volunteers to help us as net controls, as spotters, and so forth, to help us during all different kinds of weather, from the coastal storm that we had last week, to the tropical storms and hurricanes, to the blizzards, to the severe thunderstorms and tornadoes.
And is there, like, I know I hear it on weather radio, on the No Weather Radio and EAS, that you actually put out Skywarn activation may be possible.
Yes, yeah, that's part of the hazardous weather outlooks and such. Yep, and sometimes you'll hear in those statements that, amateur radio operators or trained weather spotters reported, X conditions at a certain time in those statements. And right, that gives, I believe surface reports really get the public to take it seriously. So if you go back to like June 1st, 2011, the 38-mile long quarter to half mile wide EF3 tornado that went through Westfield to Springfield to Muncie all the way to Charlton.
Holy.
It's a rare event, but the biggest thing was we knew it was on the ground. We knew it was doing damage in real time. And that allowed, I think, people to really take it seriously. It wasn't just a radar-indicated thing. People knew it was doing damage. And certainly the media, they had, the webcams at the Monarch building that showed the tornado picking up water from the Connecticut River and some of the visuals. That got people to really take it seriously because that happened near the evening rush hour. And you had, only 3 deaths and 200 injured. I'm surprised those counts weren't much higher because there were so many people in their cars, and it was happening in the commute time from about 4:15 to 5:30 p.m. So a really tough time for something like that to happen. A lot of people are out, but we only had 3 deaths and 200 injured, which I think was a testament to the warnings that were issued, but also the surface reporting that was happening. People knew it was on the ground, and I think there were a lot of other people that sheltered because of that, and that made a big difference.
What kind of training?
Thank goodness for those spotters.
Yeah, what kind of training is involved to be? Well, I've done it, so we're going from people listening
for people
to us
who don't
no
know
idea
what it's
what
about.
we're talking about today. What kind of training is involved in being a Skywarn spotter?
So it's it's a training session. It's about 2 to 2.5 hours long. I'm speaking from the Norton office perspective. The Albany training may be a little bit different, but I think it's roughly going to be the same information. I think I know the Albany office, I think they do tiers. They do basic and advanced, so I think they break up their course. The Norton office just gives one course. It's 2 to 2.5 hours long. It's kind of both basic and advanced. And it talks about the cloud formations and, really focuses on, there's a section that certainly focuses on the severe thunderstorm tornado aspect, knowing the difference between a wall and shelf cloud and such. But we talk about all the forms of weather, especially in the second part of the presentation, and we really go over what we want people to report and really want people to stick to that reporting criteria that's established. And we do post it on wx1box.org. Our website's on the weather.gov/Boston website. And I think the criteria, whether it's Albany or Norton, is the same on what conditions to report in. And as I said, you don't necessarily need a weather station to participate. Sometimes it's eyes and ears to see the damage that's occurring, to see the hail that's occurring and determining a diameter. So it isn't always needing weather station equipment, though certainly that helps. But you'd be surprised. It doesn't need to be, I have a Davis $800 weather station that can go on the computer and all that. But sometimes just a $30 rain gauge, what we call the CocoRAS rain gauge, which is part of the Community Rain, Hail, and Snow Network, which is where you report in any kind of precipitation that falls. They have a very good rain gauge for about $30 that you can use to report rainfall. But of course, somebody has to manually be there to use that gauge, whereas the electronic gauges, right, if you put them online, can be seen, anytime, anywhere. But but if you're tight on budget, little things like the $30 rain gauge and a ruler and proper snow measuring techniques, which gets reviewed in the Skywarn training, can provide tremendous info. And for some of the blizzards and snowstorms that get to a point where federal disaster declarations are declared, they will only use snowfall reports from Skywarn spotters, from co-op observers, from amateur radio operators. If it's from the general public, they will not use those in those declarations, and that can affect the aid that comes into cities and towns.
You're listening to Ham On WTBR FM. Our topic is Skywarn. We're here with Rob Macedo from the Boston Norton Weather Service. Now, we've been talking about Skywarn during the summer with the tornadoes and the severe thunderstorms, but Skywarn runs into the winter. I know Albany has online training where they'll teach you how to take snow reports and pass them along. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yep. So there's measuring techniques that are used, taking a number of measurements on a flat area with no drifting, and taking a bunch of measurements and taking an average value, and then we round the snow total to the nearest tenth. So if you give us 5 1/4 inches of snow, we'll round that up to 5.3 inches of snow. And what we do in the winter a lot of times is we will run, short amateur radio nets every 2 hours, every hour, to gather in situation reports on the snowfall. And when we get some of the really intense storms, right, we can get 2, 3, 4 inch per hour snowfall rates. So a lot of times it's good to know that those rates are occurring. And so we'll call up short nets to gather that information. And it's very useful information. Not only that, it's great practice, right? You're getting on the air, you're checking into a net, you're providing the critical sets of information, and sending that along. And certainly, we talked a little bit about digital modes. Well, certainly there's no reason why you can't use WinLink over radio to send an email message with a summary of those reports, or send those reports to us digitally, through WinLink and methods like that. These are ways to get great practice so that when communications go down, you know how to do these things, and you're providing a real public service in the middle of a weather event that's visible to not only the weather service but emergency management, the media, and so forth. So this is just another way to provide value, and that's what it's about. For amateur radio these days, is providing value to the community, to the different agencies, and as I said, even to the media. The TV meteorologists, particularly in our coverage area, Norton, know amateur radio's capabilities, know what Skywarn spotters can do, and when they see that, they value those reports and view them as very precise. So it's very important that we do our job and do it right for that reason.
And that poses my next question, because I know there's people sitting by listening to the station, say, you know what, you've got Doppler, you've got all these high-tech meteorological radars and the satellites in outer space and all this. Why do you need us? What difference can we really make compared to Doppler radar and satellite tracking?
Because again, the satellite imagery and the radars, have evolved the meteorological community, amazingly over the last 20 to 30 years, still does not tell you what's exactly happening at the surface. And there have been times where the radar doesn't see anything, the satellite doesn't see anything, but there's severe weather occurring. We had a recent example in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, where we had an EF0 tornado. Radar had nothing. And there were some strong winds with those storms, between 40 and 50 mile per hour gusts, that also occurred with those storms, and the radar was not really seeing some of that activity. It was just due to the nature of the storms and just the radar beam not seeing close enough to the ground to detect it. So there will always be advances in technology that will do better and better, but I don't think you'll ever see it replace the surface observation piece of it. It will always be an important parameter to all of the high tech, and high tech can apply to surface observations. Where, again, all the weather stations that are online that you can look at to get those surface observations is an example. Whether it be plugged into the internet or using a weather station and having it on the internet, or also amateur radio APRS, so it's still broadcasting if it loses internet connectivity. And for example, snowfall, still your most accurate way of measuring is a manual person going out with a ruler and measuring. There is technology being evolved to try to automate that, but there's a lot of difficulties with that still, particularly when you have a blizzard and it's blowing and drifting everywhere and such. We've actually done a little project with some college students to come up with some snow measuring automation techniques, which I think will be helpful, but I don't know if it'll ever fully replace manual measurements. So even with all this technology, there's still, the human part of it. There's still a human part to managing technology. My background's in high tech. If you don't manage technology, you'll be victimized by it. So you always need those checks and balances in the human part of things.
And you were mentioning the media, and it brings me to a really cool story. The summer before last, before we moved out here, I was running Skywarn net on the K2ALB machine. And this is when we had the really severe thunderstorms blowing through and the Doppler indicated tornadoes and all this stuff coming through NWS Albany. So we were getting the reports in, and we had Channel 10 up on the TV and watching Steve Caparizzo doing his thing. And I'm calling in the reports to K2AL or W2ALY or WX2ALY. The storm reports, and the next thing you know, we've got Steve Caparizzo saying our reports of the trees down and the wires down and the flooding that we just sent into the National Weather Service. So when you listen to the media, when you listen to the media, Channel 10 or whatever stations are out your way, Channel 13, when you hear those reports that there's wires down on Central Avenue, or there's a tree down in somebody's yard, in somebody's house on Hackett Boulevard or something. Those reports come from us, either via the amateur radio side or picking up the cell phone and calling into the National Weather Service to give the report. So we are still important, even with all the Doppler, like you said, even with all the Doppler and all the high-tech things, boots on the ground. Amateur radio is always boots on the ground. I know we got the winter coming up, but are there trainings coming up?
So I'm actually not sure I should have probably checked the Albany office to see what training they may have coming. We are going to try to do a couple of our sessions for the Norton office, potentially in Rhode Island and Southeast Mass before the end of the year, and then we'll have a full docket of training in the spring. And in fact, we already have a couple classes confirmed for the spring already. So the spring is where we do most of our classes, but we usually try to do a couple in the fall as well. And I would check the weather.gov/Albany office for information on training out in for Eastern New York and this part of Western Mass.
So you want to put over what your trainings you got coming up and the dates and.
So we don't have anything confirmed yet for the fall. The one training we did confirm, and I don't have the specific location yet, but it's going to be in Townsend, Mass, on May 20th of 2020. So we'll be the emergency management director there wanted to say a class and actually was looking for the fall originally, and then due to schedule conflicts on both sides, it was pushed to the spring. So we'll have we will have our annual coordinators meeting next month, and then we'll plan out. They'll have the locations that they want to do classes in, and then we'll plan out the slate for our coverage area. And Albany will likely do their scheduling in a similar fashion as well. And as I said, there's some differences in the program. In Norton, it's one class. It's 2 to 2.5 hours long. It kind of covers everything. Albany, I believe, separates it into a couple of tiers, both a basic and an advanced class. So, and I think they also do some breakouts of some of the winter activity as well. So, but all the data and information and the criteria are similar.
I know Albany does their winter thing online, that you can go to nws.albany.gov and do the winter thing. For people listening and go, how do we start a class? How do we get you guys to come do a Skywarn training class? Because I know in Albany, and I have to refer because I've only been in Mass for a year, so in Albany we're always looking to get have Skywarn come in, have the NWS come in to do classes. How does one get a hold of you or anybody over the National Weather Service?
Yeah, so for the Albany office, you would contact the Warning Coordination Meteorologist. And if you go on their website, they should list who the Warning Coordination Meteorologist is, because I I believe it may still be Ray O'Keefe, but that may have changed. But the Warning Coordination Meteorologist, and sometimes a forecaster is given the Skywarn program leader role, help coordinate the classes. And if they hear of a need, they will work with folks to coordinate a class. At our Norton office, it's between myself as the amateur radio coordinator, because we put together most of the classes for the coverage area. In fact, this year we taught most of the classes. Next year it'll be back to more of a forecaster and amateur radio coordinator mix. But we taught all the classes in our coverage area this past year with just a couple of classes where there was some assistance from a couple of forecasters, but we planned them all and did all of them with, again, just a small bit of help from the forecasters for a couple of the classes. Next year it'll be a mix. Myself and Bryce Williams are the folks to contact for classes in the Norton coverage area. Bryce Williams is the Skywarn program leader, and myself on the amateur radio side as a volunteer. And then the warning coordination meteorologist is Glenn Field, and he's also an amateur operator, KB1GHX. And he actually got his amateur radio license because he saw the work of amateur radio and how it was really helping with reports and the warning process at his office, and made him very encouraged to get his license.
All right, so we'll go to the commercial break. We will come back and finish our interview and the trivia question and whatever else we can squeeze in the next 10 minutes.
You're listening to Ham On WTBR.
Look at him, he's heading for that small moon.
That's no moon. It's a station.
I think you're right.
Berkshire weather.
WTBR radar weather for the Pittsfield area. Today, mostly sunny. A chance of showers this morning. Highs in the upper 50s. West wind 10 to 15 miles per hour with gusts up to 25 miles per hour. Chance of rain 40%. Tonight, mostly clear. Cooler with lows in the upper 30s. West wind 10 to 15 miles per hour. Thursday, sunny. Highs in the lower 60s. Southwest wind 5 to 10 miles per hour. Weather forecasts for WTBR FM are provided by the National Weather Service.
Radio for people who used to love radio. Welcome back. WTBR.
You've supported her through every accomplishment in her life.
Cross, pull, I tied my shoes.
While your ultimate goal is to teach her to stand on her own.
Let go, let go. I can do it.
There are things she just can't do without your support.
There were drugs and alcohol at the party.
Talk with the teens in your life. And if they're in substance abuse treatment and recovery, support them. Help them turn the hardest thing they've ever done into their greatest accomplishment. For information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Attention shoppers, if anyone is missing a rather plump set of love handles, please come to the customer service counter and claim them. The ample love handles were lost in the produce department where their former owner had purchased fruits and veggies to munch on during the big game. Thank you and have a good day.
Small step number 81, snack on fruits and veggies. It's just one of the many small steps you can take to get healthy. Learn more at www.smallstep.gov.
A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
They say the best things in life are free. So why are we paying so much for our basic information and entertainment needs? The average cable TV bill has more than doubled in the last 10 years. The price of movie tickets keeps going up. So exactly what is free today anyway? Well, you're listening to it. Local radio. Support the advertisers that support this radio station. And keep listening. We won't send you a bill. There are still some things you just shouldn't have to pay for.
WTBR. Impressive. Most impressive.
And we're back to Ham On. Turn that off. We're back to Ham On WTBR. I wanted to put this out because we kind of need help here. We hope that this show is entertaining, fun, and hope you learn about amateur radio, but we need your help. The Western Mass Traffic Net depends on the radio operators to pass and receive traffic. In order for the Western Mass Traffic Net to survive, we need operators to step up. We have a few NCS shifts available. The net only takes a few minutes a day and is a vital resource for Western Massachusetts. It's also where we have our Skywarn activation net too with WA1ZHM. We need a few operators who are willing to step in and take on NCS responsibilities. And if you can help us, and it's not too hard to do, we can train you with just like that. Just send me an email, kd2jkv@gmail.net or kd2jkv@arrl.net. Pick one. For details and available times, the Western Mass Traffic Net runs 7 days a week with 2 cycles, Cycle 1 at 10 a.m. and Cycle 2 at 1 p.m. And the Western Mass Traffic Net needs you. So we got a couple announcements to do, the trivia question, and then final thoughts from our guests. So what's up with what we have for announcements?
The announcements for Our events we have on Friday, October 25th. Yay, my birthday. Yay. We have the Pittsfield Halloween Parade. It begins at 7 p.m. on Tyler Street. Bring the kids, enjoy the parade. And also on top of that, of course, we have trick-or-treating on October 31st. No, duh, it's Halloween. Hello. Please leave your lights on if you're participating in the trick-or-treating. It goes from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Have the lights on. Go ahead and have the kids out in their costumes and enjoy your trick-or-treating.
The Berkshire's only rock station, 89.7 WTBR-FM, Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
Yes, that's where we are. Okay, so the trivia question, and we'll pose it to the panel and people on Facebook. What organization is the ultimate authority for the radio amateurs in the United States?
So, ultimate authority, I assume, I would say the Federal Communications Commission, FCC.
That's right, it's the FCC. So, as we got like 5 minutes left in the show. For the last 5 minutes of the show, and before we get to that, I want to remind everybody that next week, here at the WTBR studios, we'll have the New England Paranormal Research people, investigators in here, because it will be Haunted Halloween and Haunted Ham-On WTBR FM. Rob, thanks for being here. Any final thoughts that you want to bring up to us?
Yeah, so certainly we're entering the winter season, so we'll be looking for snowfall reports, and if we get the high winds and such, those wind damage type reports, and then as we get towards spring, could be flooding issues with snow melt and stuff, so that'll be something that we'll be watching for the area. One of the things we didn't talk a ton about was hurricanes, and the amateur radio station at the National Hurricane Center, WX4 NHC, we do support some operations and a hurricane net that runs over Echolink and IRLP called the VOIP Hurricane Net. And then, of course, there's the HF Hurricane Watch Net that's been in service now for, my goodness, about 54 years, since 1965. The amateur radio station at the Hurricane Center is finishing up its 39th year of service this year. Next year will be its 40th. So pretty remarkable operation. Julio Rapol is the founder of that operation, and Julio Rapol and John McHugh are the coordinators there. We did a lot of work with them during Hurricane Dorian, a very long-duration activation, and just very devastating what happened in the Bahamas, and then Category 1 type of hurricane issues in North Carolina. And then, of course, some grazing tropical storm force conditions on Cape Cod and the islands before really impacting Nova Scotia, Canada. Yes, the Canadian Maritimes can get hurricanes, and they even have a Canadian Hurricane Center to support that. And the warning preparedness meteorologist there is also an amateur operator and involved in Hurricane Ham operations. So, so some feedback there, and we've worked with the Hurricane Center on tropical systems in New England, such as Irene in 2011 and Sandy in 2012, and have had amateur radio reports in the advisories from our area. When Humberto affected Bermuda, we had several amateur radio reports of over 100-mile-per-hour winds and gusts, and that data was also used in cited amateur radio as the source of the reports in public advisories. So, just another example of public service. Talking a little bit about the hurricane side of it. The season's winding down, but still can't rule out a late tropical system for the southern parts of the area, and something that could morph into something that's not tropical, but maybe a hybrid type system that could affect us, like like the coastal storm last week, which wasn't tropical, but a couple years back we had some tropical infusion into a coastal storm that caused very similar conditions to what we had last week. That was in late October 17. So, just want to throw in some mention on the hurricanes, and again, mentioned a lot of things about the importance of the public service, even when the communications don't fail, and how we can use these events to promote what we can do, add information for the historical record, and be part of the weather warning process, which helps save lives and property. So it's been great to be on this program, and thanks to Peter for inviting me, and enjoyed coming out to the western part of the state. And as I said, I'm from Saratoga, New York, so Eastern New York is still an area that is near and dear to me. So a shout out to some of the amateurs in Eastern New York, and as I said, my former